Howdy folks, I'm Southern Wolf of Southern Wolf Studios. Welcome back to Samurai of Hyuga. Let's check out our stats. We're leaning towards calculative, perverted, stoic, protective, and finesse. Chapter 6. Honor and Prejudice. The hut belonged to a sprightly old woman who was actively decaying, much like its sole resident. Umi was her name, though whether it was her true name or just an affectionate title I didn't know. I was too busy admiring the decor. Mismatched fungi lined the corners of the floor, cautioning anyone against breathing in too deeply. The squealings and rustlings of mice never stopped for more than a moment. Further evidence of their presence came from the droppings, which were everywhere. I spotted Matsumi attempting to step around in between them, but it ended up being a futile endeavor. I had worked so hard to avoid places like these. I stared at a man that I had not seen for some time. He stared back at me, tired and weary, yet also disappointed. The feelings my reflection and I share were mutual. The difference between us was I could smash him to ripples if I was so inclined. I was, and waves distorted the contents of a large wash bin. It took an enlightened soul to disregard the importance of physical appearance. No, I imagine it was easier when one was ugly to begin with. This is why the most pious of monks were rarely handsome, and why the vow of chastity was so easy for them to take. As for me, while gaunt and dirty with hair far too greasy, I didn't look halfway terrible. My eyes were perhaps dull, the shadows beneath them dark, the creases in my brow a bit deep. I like to think I have a fearsome appearance, which in my line of work did far more favors than not. Dangerous, as Toshi said back then. Scissors and shanky elderly hands were also dangerous. Umi had a wickedly toothless smile that didn't encourage confidence. I understood that this needed to be done if I was going to walk out of the city gates unnoticed. But did it have to be done by a swiveled up grandmother with two lazy eyes? I think I'll cut my own hair. I had a steadier hand than most. Steadier than Granny's, certainly. Those partially rusted shears shook precariously in Umi's hands like kunai, but with disease instead of poison. I'd seen infection happen where hair loss was the least of your worries, but my words were powerless against the grandmother's enthusiasm. The lazy-eyed crone beamed with what I imagined to be pride before talking in a language I could only partially understand. "Can't wait to cut the samurai's hair. It'll be the talk of the town, no doubt about that." I looked towards Matsumi for something. Anything. There was no doubt that she wanted out of this damp feces pit more than anyone, but the kid just stood there with a grand curiosity, deciphering every accented word the old woman spoke as if she was a living history book. Probably was. And then she chided for me for my reluctance. "Come now, Okami, it's exceedingly evident that you do trim your own hair. Some semblance of fashion can only be an improvement for you." Matsumi's cutesy smile only served to accentuate her biting remark. So what if I cut my own hair? It was economical. Toshi emerged from the doorway and handed Matsumi a glorified potato sack made of hemp. The kid looked at her new clothes with an undisgusted frown. That frown would grow considerably larger once she discovered how less comfortable hemp was than silk. I couldn't help but smile. "Looks like we're both making sacrifices, kid." I couldn't help but notice the dark-skinned Kunoichi wasn't wearing her ninja garb anymore. She instead sported rags that, while clean, would blend her right in with the rest of the slummers that we'd encountered so far. At least she didn't speak like one. "Hashimoto-san, the changing room is free now. I know you favor your silk kimono, but you'll have to keep it packed until we're well out of the city capital." Toshi spoke with a respectful and gentle tone, as I noticed she always did with Matsumi. The geisha at the Sleeping Duck treated her the same way. Everyone did, except me, but I'd save that for a thought for later. Umi wanted my attention now, and asked me what particular hairstyle I desired. "What'd you say you be fancy, sweetie? I'll make you the handsome man in Yamato." The chromage, the epitome of traditional samurai haircut, is unmistakably unique. The front of the head is shaved down, while the sides and back are tied in a top knot. I can't pull this off, no one really can, so I'll forgo the shaving bit for a bit of a modern touch. Chromage, but don't save the top. Just tie it back in a top knot. Umi nodded in what I hoped for a signal of understanding, and proceeded to clip away, with expert speed. Long strands of hair fell to the floor. She dunked my head into a basin again and again. I tried my best not to swallow any of the stale water. She was eventually satisfied and knotted up my hair with expert ease. I dried off with a piece of cloth whose smell I tried not to think about. I looked towards Toshi, who was looking me over. "Well, how's it look?" Instead of an answer, I got a gracious bow instead. With her head still pointed towards the floor, the Kondo spoke up. "I had doubted you before, Okami-san, but no longer. You look just how Satsuma described. You are the sword who cuts the heavens." I scratched my top knot of hair in embarrassment. It would end up going loose if I kept this habit up, but I didn't care much. A title like that just didn't suit me, and Toshi's bow only made me feel worse about what I said before. The two of us needed to talk, but not now. Now we needed a plan. We had some decisions to make before our journey ahead. Matsumi interrupted my chain of thought, itching against her new outfit feverishly. When she spotted me, she went into a blank expression, as if I was a complete stranger. Her cheeks flushed red as she turned away and sighed. Very fitting. A sleek twist on tradition. Yes, I dare say you nearly look respectable, Ronin. I can see how you may be mistaken for a samurai this way." Coming from the kid, I'll take that as a compliment. Umi nodded in appreciation for her handiwork. "Y'all should relax now. Keep still and now go brew us some tea." The lazy-eyed woman gingerly skipped out of the room, humming a song whose lyrics were long forgotten. I sighed and envied her happiness, but only for a moment. My eyes skimmed around the living room. Aside from a beaten-up table and a pile of blankets, was bare. There wasn't much of a room for much else besides rat droppings. Thus this hut only fit one person. If I had to guess, we were the first visitor Umi had in quite some time. I could relate to the hairdresser's loneliness. I caught myself growing sympathetic. Matsumi's yawn was dreadfully contagious. It forced me to suck in a deep breath of the spore-filled air. Combined with whatever lived in the basin of water, I'd be surprised if it wasn't coughing up blood tomorrow. But the mouth was hardly the worst place to bleed from. I just hope nothing the Emperor dreams about mentions dysentery. Toshi snapped me out of a bit of nasty imagery. "Now you two must be thoroughly exhausted from all that has happened. I apologize, but we cannot quite rest yet." She displayed an empathetic frown. Respect was one thing, but empathy? I knew even less about that word. "Okami-san, before we step further, there's something I must know." The Kanoji kept her eyes locked onto mine. While closing the distance between us, before long she was standing just inside my personal comfort zone, that zone being the effective range of my katana, of course. "May I touch your hand?" "Oh, just my hand." "Perverted has increased." "Oh, just my hand?" I received a stern look from Toshi and an oblivious one from the kid. Apparently it was up to me to make matters lively around here, a burden I was more than willing to bear. So I shrugged and held out my right hand. The Kanoichi's figure was hardly done justice by those loose rags she now wore. Personally, I was a fan of the tight-skinned shozoku, but I'll keep that opinion to myself for now. "Yes, just your hand. I'll try reading your palms to determine what form of animal your spirit takes. As you should recall, Matsumi is the red panda." The statement caused the Shingenja's expression to turn somber. If I remember correctly, she was having trouble with her imaginary pet. Before I gave in to Toshi's spirit reading seminar, I had to ask, what does it even matter? I've gotten this far without ghosts telling me how to swing my sword. Why do I need them now? "It matters," she whispers in her reply, "because your spirit will become so much greater than you are now. If you attune yourself to the sincerity of your being, you will become—" Dark-skinned fingers interlocked with mine. They were long and surprisingly slender, far different from Mitsumi's. They were cool as well, as cold as the chills Toshi's heavy words made run down my spine. "Something without bonds, limits, or equals. This is what Satsuma has seen." Something didn't feel quite right. I knew the instant her hands touched mine that she was no warrior. The hilt of a sword, the shaft of a spear, the handle of an axe. Wielding a weapon caused the skin beneath the fingers to harden. Even holding a bow would cause this in non-dominant hands. Both palms lacked any signal of callus, though they weren't nearly as smooth as the kid's. "You've never used a weapon before, have you?" I said with a sigh of disappointment. Should I be surprised? There was an unspoken decree upheld throughout Hyuga. It wasn't written on any legal document that I knew of, but it had been around ever since condos were defeated? Beaten? I wasn't quite sure what the word was, but the law went something like this. A condo wielding a weapon is to be beheaded with it. Toshi nodded and apologized. I will not serve well in combat, I'm afraid, but I intend to help wherever I can. Great. A ninja that couldn't even toss a ninja star. If I had to guess from her palms, she did hard labor until recent years. Even a vagabond like me knew that it had been 2 years since Emperor Satsuma took the throne. There may have been a correlation there, and their impossible friendship might not be so impossible after all. Now back to the spirit seminar. Palm reading itself can identify your spirit animal. Toshi traced her long fingers between the webbing of mine, nearly tickling me. Without knowing in which year you were born, you have no public records, Okami-san. Her tone sharpened as her eyes delved into mine, accusing me as if I was hiding information on purpose. The kid came to my defense before I could respond. Okami can't help it. His family circumstances are difficult. Don't press this matter any further, Toshi-san. Matsumi's cheeks puffed out as they always did when she got angry, and even I had to admit it was cute. One of the reasons I'd like to upset her so often. Toshi cowered in defeat at the pouty Shingenja. Gomen nasai. It is only that I cannot help attune Okami without this knowledge. Satsuma-san is counting on me. But if he doesn't know, then... Who's to say I don't? I was tired of getting talked over, especially by scholarly types who thought I couldn't even count my own fingers. Add 3/4 of a year to the day that the Sumi Tomo pirates raided Genfu to pieces. That was the day the last of the samurai left the old capital and moved northward to the Emperor's new home in Yamato, and they never looked back. Not for my mother, not for any of them. But that didn't stop their stories from being told. Samurai were honorable and noble warriors, always, and I would hate them, always. A spark of realization dawned over Toshi's face, but the same couldn't be said for the kid. 3/4. That's 9 months, and after such an event, how can you narrow it down in such a fashion? It was a popular month for orphans. Charming has increased. It was a popular month for orphans. And it was. There wasn't much incentive for the pirates to stay after they pillaged the place. They weren't exactly the type of men who took responsibility for their brats either. My fellow orphans and I were all around the same age, though with food as scarce as what some of them stayed young forever. I despise it when you're purposely vague. Umi walked in with a rickety tray of cups, each containing boiling hot tea from the smell of it. I take a cup, but my hands were currently occupied. I detail the aged Kondo misinterpreted. Well, aren't those just the sweetest pair, child? I can't wait for grandchildren myself. She handed Matsumi a cup, who took it gracefully, but drank it reluctantly, her face scrunched up in disgust. I guess this was a far cry from the premium-grade green tea she had enjoyed back at the Sleeping Duck. A tingling sensation drew my attention back towards the woman in front of me. Toshi's breathing caressed down my arm as she looked to be appraising every line of my outstretched palm. I was uncomfortable. It felt as some deep part of me was being exposed, a part of myself not even I could see. I see it now. This animal suits you oddly well, Okami-san. I tried to pretend I didn't care, but who was I fooling? The palm reader took an excruciating long pause before speaking. This was it. I was about to know what was tucked away deep inside of me. An aspect of myself I had no clue about until now. Your spirit animal is... Let's go with a snow monkey. Why not? Perverted has greatly increased. The snow monkey. Playful and intelligent primates. They engage in complex relationships and thrive in cold climates. They enjoy hot springs and are said... Ugh. Matsumi coughed up her tea in an unladylike outburst. At one moment you're painted as our peerless savior, and in the next you are not but a perverted, red-faced baboon. The irony! That's touching a nerve. I might not have known that the stupid spirit existed a minute ago, but nobody gets to make fun of it except for me. Who are you calling red-faced? Does this monkey need to teach you about the birds and the bees, kid? I smirked a devilish smile, almost daring Mitsumi towards the line of questioning. Her weak spots were too obvious, but the wisdom of the Shingenja proved too great. While I admire your use of idiomatic expressions, Okami, I believe we have more pressing matters. With our fingers no longer intertwined, I expected our spiritual discussion to be at an end. It turned out Toshi wasn't quite finished yet. There's one last thing that you should know, Okami-san. The seriousness in her voice, the gaze in her eye. This is more important than the astrological animal sign. I listened in. The choices you make from now on will affect your spiritual harmony. This attunement will strengthen you for your battles ahead, but only if you act accordingly into your true self. Her words felt like an anchor to my feet, with meaning deeper than the bottom of the celestial sea. An unpleasant combination, but also didn't make much sense. So you're saying I should just be myself? Sounds a bit too easy. And while I said that, I knew better. The Kondo and I seemed to agree on one thing at least, which she voiced out loud. Nothing is easy in Hyuga. 3 loud knocks threatened to break the flimsy entrance to Ume's humble abode. The problem was she wasn't expecting any more visitors, but the amount of teacups we had were the least of our problems.
A loud, demanding voice started up. Let us in or we'll break your dirt skin dump to pieces.
The rice paper walls vibrated with every word of the man's loud yell. This situation was getting bad to worse, and an all too familiar feeling returned to me. The feeling of getting sold out. This is why I didn't trust condos. I looked toward Toshi and Ume with newfound skepticism, the latter of which had taken initiative, fidgeting with a large section of the tatami wall. When she slid off the covering, I realized what it was. Hurry now, I've hidden far less valuable things in here before. Let me handle these uniformed goons. Come on now. It wasn't comfortable stowing away in secret compartments, but Masumi had already positioned herself inside. And where the kid goes, so do I. We were a bit close for comfort, but the Shingenja shinobi and I managed to fit inside. Ume closed the panel atop us, and not a moment too soon, I heard what must have been the front door getting kicked asunder. Without being able to see anything, I had to rely on my mind to picture what was going on out there. For better or worse, my mind exceeded in gruesome detail, one of the reasons why I couldn't sleep at night. The old woman cried out, "What do you think you're doing, barging in an old woman's house like this? If you go!" The noise of iron gauntlets when they slammed teeth apart was unmistakable.
But it was the sound of Kogeki, iron sandals, that I was paying attention to.
How many footsteps? 2? 3? No. Just 2. One of them belonged to an exceptionally large man whose steps made the floor creak, even in the separate room.
I could hear muffled conversation. This place reeks of kondo. You filthy scum. We'd be better off if you keeled over and died.
A loud thumping note trailed immediately afterwards, as well as a horrific moan. A kick in the ribs would take the wind out of anybody, especially if the kicker wore chainmail socks. The sleeves was pulled on to get my attention. I turned towards Mitsumi. A look of fear and concern in her eyes cut right through me. I knew the thought she couldn't bring to voice. "Baka, go out there and save her!" My thoughts returned to me just as I seen beyond this thin wall. Ume's groans had ceased. I was about to write her off as dead before the deeper-voiced guard yelled out in agony.
My hand! This wrinkled bitch bit my fucking hand off!
That caused even me to shake nervously. The old lady was tenacious, but that might just have gotten her killed. Whether I stayed put or went out there to save her both had consequences.
Toshi's eyes met mine. She shook her head. It felt like Mitsumi and Toshi sat at opposing ends, but it was up to me to make the choice. Nothing is easy in Hyuga.
Stay. Attunement has increased. Making a move now would ruin my chances of getting away safely out of the city. We had taken too many risks already. I was a bodyguard after all. I wasn't about to put the kid in even more danger, but she wasn't making it easy for me. Masumi's large dark eyes, those hazels held so much fear and sympathy. They looked at me as I listened to the painful gasp of air that our hostess took at every breath. I wasn't usually affected by guilt, but the old woman didn't deserve to be treated like this. No one did. The metal gauntlet clanged against her skull over and over. It was a harrowing sound that one echoed inside my ears. Just when I thought it was all over, the world shook around me. It wasn't an earthquake. It was Ume's body slamming onto the floor. The thud vibrated the flimsy screen door that hid us from the horrifying scene. I heard Mitsumi's panting for air that refused to come in. She looked even more pale than usual. Toshi held no expression, at least none that I could read. With Ume in serious danger, the question remained, what do I do? Stay. I silently apologized to the old condo lady who had welcomed us and even gave us a free haircut. I knew I was abandoning her to the mercy of those well-armed thugs, but I also knew that this was the best of a bunch of terrible options. Ume continued to cry out in pain. It was a testament to her toughness that she was still alive, let alone conscious. But the agonizing groan only drew more unwanted attention her way.
Urasai's stupid condo. Where is that damn ronin and that Shingenja too? She's worth a fortune.
The man with larger footsteps and a deeper voice replied, I never thought a man's words could make my heart flutter. Must be a bad trip.
Must be a bad tip. Let's get back to the captain before he asks for us, Haruka.
I waited a minute. After I could no longer hear them, heard footsteps that had quieted down. Natsumi tried to rush out of the compartment, but I held her back with outstretched arms. She shot me a nasty glare, but I waited a minute longer.
For an assassin, patience was everything. Folks like to think it was all swordplay, but the reality is it's far more dull.
Often, the greatest danger you face were stiff legs or a sore bum waiting for hours on end. Clever guards like to linger around from time afterwards, and Ume's cries made for a good lure. But this fish wasn't taking the bait. Or rather, the snow monkey wasn't taking the banana. After I was confident the coast was clear, I removed the paneling that kept us hidden. The kid rushed over to Ume's side. Her face was red all over. Her legs were too weak to stand. Mitsumi's glare darted back to me, preceding harsh critique.
Ume-san gave us sanctuary and you did nothing to save her! What use is that katana if you won't even use it?
She shook with rage and disbelief. Disbelief that such evil existed in this world. Disbelief that sometimes, even those with the power to stop evil, choose not to. But harboring criminals is a death penalty for condos. Ume put herself in extraordinary risk to protect us, but keeping ourselves hidden kept her alive. If I had revealed myself and either of those men managed to escape, Ume and this entire block of slums would be burned alive. I needed the kid to know just how high the stakes were. This was for Ume's protection.
Protection test passed. Attunement has increased.
This was for Ume's protection. I knelt beside the condo and checked it for her injuries. The woman was tiny but stout, and it was her stoutness that kept her from being frail. I couldn't guess her age due to her unfamiliar heritage, but she wasn't quite as old as she appeared. Poverty took a toll on people physically and mentally, and that's something I knew all too well. After some reluctance, Mitsumi agreed with me.
I trust your motives. I only hope you weren't putting my safety over hers.
The way she said it reminded of our heated exchange back at the Kabuki Theater. Back then, when the kid slammed a pouch full of gold coins against the stage floor. I was getting used to getting yelled at, but this one struck a chord.
Think I would have scunned your payment? Of course, it's the only thing you ever seem to care about.
Was money the reason I did nothing? Helping Ume certainly wasn't going to get me any row. I wasn't sure of my motives anymore, but Toshi of all people came to my defense. She gave me an admiring and lingering look. You are willing to do what it takes in order to achieve Satsuma-sama's vision. I raised an uncertain eyebrow over the remark, but I didn't pursue it further. The Kunoichi's approval, which was nice to know. We managed to bandage up Ume, who, besides a few broken ribs and missing teeth, was surprisingly chipper.
They call that a beating? We call that a gloveless crime, my dear.
I wasn't sure what to say to that. Toshi remained with her for a while longer, instructing her on medical care. Apparently, patrols unleashing their anger out on condos wasn't an unfamiliar event. I guess that's what happens when you're regarded as the most secure city in Hyuga. I caught Matsumi outside, deep in her own thoughts. It wasn't a pleasant scene back there, not one I want Matsumi to dwell in either.
You gonna be okay, kid?
My concerns weren't just of that of a bodyguard. I listened to the Shingenja's sniffles while she composed herself for a response.
I'll be fine, but why? Why much such foulness exists in this life, Okami? To think that such disparity exists, it's impermissible. I wish I'd never come to Yamato.
Me too, kid. Me too.
We'd be out of the city soon. I never thought I'd look forward to hear non-stop complaining again. The trip into the capital started with good sake, but ended with a bitter aftertaste.